So, our today's guest is someone who is counseling psychologist and a founder of Self Lead Healing. She is a mental health service, and her journey with psychology began in school days, where her natural curiosity and ease with the subject ignited a lifelong passion. As a trauma informed therapist, she firmly believes in the intent healing power within each one of us. Beyond her work, she dwells into spirituality and philosophy. She engages in a deep conversation on these specific topics. She is also a seasoned Bharatnatyam dancer, finding profound self expression and presence through her art. Ayushi, welcome to my show.
Thank you, Anuradha ji. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm so grateful that you invited me for the talk. Yeah.
Thank you, Ayushi. And Ayushi, the very first question that really excites me is uh, your journey with psychology began from the school days, right? So,
Mhm,
can you
mhm.
share what was the pivotal moment or experience from that time that really solidified your decision to pursue and, choose this path professionally?
Right. I think when I look back to school days, I think my journey with psychology started in class 11th when I took up the subject. And at that time, I just took it out of curiosity. I had no idea about the subject, but I think it just felt like I just felt like taking the subject, so I took it. But I think when I started reading about it, I started studying the subject. I think one thing that I can say confidently is that psychology was the only subject in school that I studied without fear. So that was the subject that I studied with ease. So even when there was an exam the next day, I was never scared of it. Even if अगर मेरा syllabus नहीं भी हुआ है, even then I used to be okay. I used to be at ease, and even the teachers were not that great, to be honest. It wasn't like I loved my teachers, my psychology teachers, but the subject made me so curious, and it was the only subject that I studied with ease. तो जैसे बाकी सब्जेक्ट्स होते हैं, मे बी मैथ्स, मे बी साइंस और whatever, there's some amount of fear, or you're like, oh, you need to study these aspects in order to get good marks. I think there was no fear with psychology, and I never had any pressure or any expectations from the subject. So I
Hmm.
think that's where my journey with psychology began. I was just curious about the subject, and there was no pressure, you know. So it just came to me very easily, I would say.
Lovely, lovely. So the other question is like, as a trauma informed therapist, what are some
Mhm.
common misconception about trauma that you have encountered in your journey, and how do you address them in your uh, daily practice?
Right. I think that's a very important question for the audience also, because I think when we talk about the word trauma, a lot of us think that trauma are just very big, intense experiences that one has, either let's say related to maybe a death in the family, or maybe when you lose someone, or just experiencing a war situation, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe experiencing a natural calamity, or experiencing maybe seeing an accident firsthand, maybe seeing uh, a murder firsthand, right? So these are very intense, big experiences that we encounter. And yes, those are big T traumas, as we say. But trauma, again, there are also small instances in our life that can also come under the lens of trauma. So, as I said, there are some big T traumas, and then there are some small T traumas. So, for instance, let's say as a child, we only have three needs: to be heard, to be seen, and to be valued, you know. And we sort of, as kids, because we are dependent on our parents, only the parent figures are the ones who can fulfill these needs for us as a kid, right? So sometimes, because nobody is a perfect parent and we all do mistakes, so there are
True.
sometimes moments in our childhood where, let's say, for instance, maybe we were crying, you know, and it was really hard for us as a kid to process all those emotions, and maybe there was no one around us at that time. So somewhere a part in us maybe internalized that, nobody will take care of me. I need to do everything on my own, you know. Or when I was, let's say, crying, someone just said that, it's bad to cry. You shouldn't cry. It's a sign of weakness, you know. And that's when we suppress all of those emotions. So even these smaller moments are actually small teen traumas for a lot of people, because at that time we internalize a very deep rooted core belief that maybe people will not take care of me. So I think, and any kind of abuse also, when it happens in the childhood. So even small moments in our childhood can really impact us in big ways. And when we as adults, when we go into relationships, most importantly romantic relationships, sometimes we make these statements that, oh, this person does not care about me, no matter how much I'm suffering, this person will never take care of me. Although that might not be true, but that core belief is so deeply rooted that it comes up, it manifests in our relationships also. So I think one of the misconceptions is कि trauma से बहुत बड़े events होते हैं, but I
Hmm.
think बहुत smaller इवेंट्स भी होते हैं हमारे चाइल्डहुड में, और ये भी एक मिसकंसेप्शन है कि सिर्फ कुछ लोगों ने ट्रॉमा एक्सपीरियंस करा, but that's not true. I think all of us, we have experienced trauma to some extent, maybe not big T traumas but small T traumas, and that is something which is common across all human beings. So if you are born on this planet, I think we all of us have gone through some amount of trauma. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that, Ayushi. So, jumping on to the other question, how do spirituality and philosophy influence your approach to this therapy and mental health care? Can you share any specific instance where these disciplines have, intersected in your practice or maybe with your patients?
I think my journey with spirituality sort of, my interest in spirituality sort of increased when I started working in this field. And if we talk about philosophy, I think if we go back in the history of psychology, so psychology actually philosophy में से ही निकला है, So it's like a branch of philosophy, so to say. So a lot of questions that we ask in psychology are very fundamental questions related to life and our humanness that we also study in philosophy. So psychology in itself is a part of philosophy, and that's why we ask a lot of philosophical and fundamental questions. But to specifically talk about my journey with spirituality and psychology, I think there's this approach that I follow in my practice, and the approach is called internal family systems, right? So basically, this approach talks about external family outside of us. Like we have our parents, we have our siblings, we have our kids, right? And everyone in the family is playing a role, right? तो कभी अगर फैमिली में लड़ाई हो जाती है, so we know whom to go to.
Hmm.
अगर हमें कोई और नीड फुलफिल करनी है तो हमें पता है कि कौन सही बंदा है उसके लिए,
Right.
you know. And that's how our external family sort of functions, because everyone is playing a role, and it is important for the family, um, for the system to balance itself, for the family dynamics to be balanced. Everyone is important, right? Similarly, IFS says like that we also have an internal family. So we have different parts of us, and those parts are playing different roles at every time. And
Hmm.
all these parts are sort of trying to protect us. So, for instance, right now, let's say when we are talking, so maybe there's a part which is analyzing everything, right? Maybe there's a part in you who's trying to manage everything so that all the tech remains
Hmm.
proper and things are, at place. And sometimes when, let's say, you're with your kids or you're with your family, maybe there's a caretaking part of you that comes up, right? So similarly, we have all these parts, and IFS says that these parts are always trying to protect us, maybe trying to protect some wounded parts of us also. So for instance, let's say as a child, as I said, we only have three needs: to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. Basically, to be loved, right? And let's say as a kid, we're not we're not getting this need met. For instance, maybe we have
Hmm.
emotionally unavailable parents. And one instance happens where, let's say, you score very well in the school, And because you scored well, you get so much of love and attention. So a part of us learned that in order for me to receive love, I need to be an overachiever. So
Hmm.
I need to achieve a lot of things. I need to be best at everything. Only then I will be loved. So that's when this part of us took up this role to be an overachiever. So this part is actually protecting a very wounded part in us, which is craving the love.
True.
So there's this wounded part, and this other part is trying to protect that part, right? So IFS basically says that we have an internal family, and our parts are always trying to do the best for us. So there are no bad parts, right? Now coming back to the essence of the question. So IFS says when all of these are parts, then who are we?
Hmm. Yeah.
अगर हमारे सिस्टम में सारे पार्ट्स हैं हम इनको पार्ट्स बोल रहे हैं तो हम कौन है So IFS says there's something known as self, self with a capital S, or self energy, and this self is not a part, and that is actually our true nature.
Hmm.
That is our authentic self, and that self carries a lot of wisdom, and that self is there in everyone, you know. And IFS says कि उस self की कुछ characteristics होते हैं, you know. So when we are experiencing that state of self, when we are in self, there are certain qualities that we experience, and IFS defines them as 8 C's. तो वो C's हैं कि when we are in that state of self, we experience compassion, curiosity, clarity, connectedness, confidence, creativity, calm,
Hmm.
and courage. So all of these qualities are really the qualities of self. So कभी कभी होता है ना when we are let's say suffering and someday we just get up and we just do the thing that maybe we were scared of. And sometimes we tell our friends and family कि मुझे नहीं पता उस दिन उतना courage कहाँ से आया था.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it just came from somewhere,
Yes.
you know. A lot of times we say that कि वो courage मुझे नहीं पता मेरे पास वो हिम्मत कहाँ से आई थी but it just
True.
came,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? And that comes from the self. So IFS says that we all of us we have that self energy in us. That is our true nature actually. So that means that nobody is bad in this world. You know, it's just that because of our trauma and the kind of conditioning we experience, in our life, our paths sort of sometimes take up extreme roles. You know, so that's why some parts become very angry, or some parts sort of binge eat, or some parts sort of engage in alcoholism. But that happens because of trauma. And that's why it becomes difficult for us to access that self energy,
Hmm.
right? But it's there in all of us, and I have to say that's why we don't need to look for anything outside of us to heal ourselves,
True.
because we have a capacity within. So when I started, so I think this was the approach that fascinated me so much. And the more deeper I went into IFS, I realized that, oh my God, there are so many parallels with spirituality.
Yes.
So this self that IFS actually talks about, it is the same self that all the spiritual schools have been talking for so long.
Hmm.
And this is actually the statement that even the founder of IFS, Richard Swartz, he also makes these statements that, when he started developing IFS, he was an atheist. And the more he started researching, he realized that this concept of self that he's defining in his research, this is the same thing that all the spiritual schools have been talking for so long.
Absolutely.
And that's why my interest with spirituality sort of increased, because I started seeing so many parallels, and I started having so much respect for our culture, for the text that is already there, and so much that's there in our culture. And even Richard Swartz, usually he talks about this in his interviews, and he says that with IFS he is now a spiritual person, he became spiritual
Ah,
you know
right.
Right. So I think this approach sort of really helped me understand spirituality better, and that's where my interest with spirituality sort of grew. And I think now I can't see them in segregation. So when I'm using this modality in my therapy work, I don't see different from spirituality anymore. I think it's the same thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things I really liked it, I have heard about this analogy, and I myself I have been reading a lot of books to understand the energy and everything. But the way you have explained, the way you brought that beautification, that was really nice and it really touched me. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, the other question I have for you is, Ayushi, you have been a Bharatnatyam dancer for almost around 14 years, and how has this art form has influenced your understanding of the presence and being in the moment, and you know, and how does it help you in your therapy sessions?
So, the more I go deeper in my field and in my therapy sessions, and the more um, experiences that I'm getting, as a therapist, I've realized that the most important thing that we can give to our clients in our therapy session is actually our genuine, authentic presence. You know. So even right now, when I'm sitting, if I can fully be present in this moment, that's the biggest gift that I can give you, right?
Absolutely.
And I think, and I think this presence that we talk about is the same as the self that we talk. you
Yeah.
know so when we are in that state of self, we are much more present in the moment, and we are no longer blended with what happened with us, let's say the morning, or maybe the
Hmm.
parts or the voices that are coming up, that I need to do that thing, I need to do that thing, and just being in the moment. And the importance of presence is something which is extremely crucial in the therapy session, because when clients come up, usually they come in distress, and their parts are really on high alert, you know. So the moment they come in, irrespective of whether they are aware of it or not, they look for that sense of safety in the session, you
Hmm.
know. And if you're genuinely present, they can actually sense that presence and that sense of safety, right? But imagine if you're carrying your baggage, where let's say you had a fight in the morning and you're sitting with that energy, we can sense it.
Absolutely.
No matter
Yes.
if you have put that mask, we can sense it.
Yes.
You know? So I think presence is such an important actually tool in psychotherapy, which is crucial for that safety and for that safe relationship that we build with our clients. So I think with dancing, I realized that when I used to dance, there were certain pieces um, in my Bharatanatyam repertoire that I used to just get lost in that piece. So when I'm dancing, I used to sometimes, I won't say all the time, but sometimes I used to just forget that there are people sitting or people are watching me. And sometimes I used to just forget about the time also. So, that state of flow that we talk about,
True.
I think
Hmm.
that is something that I had experienced while dancing. So
Hmm.
when I came into the field of mental health and this concept of presence that a lot of people talk about, I think first people start to intellectualize it. Ki actually hota kya hai presence? So when we started reading about it, I felt like I've experienced it,
Hmm.
you know. So I think if I look back to my dancing days, I think that is something that I'd already experienced when I felt like, oh, nobody's watching. I was so engrossed in the moment. So I think in this field, that experience of presence was there somehow, you know, and I knew what presence felt like, I would say. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely, Ayushi. So, Ayushi, the very important question is mental health awareness has increased significantly in recent years, right? So, what changes or improvements would you like to see in this specific field of mental health in your future?
I think the most important question, I would say, there are a lot of changes that I would, and I think all the therapists in our field would love to see, because at this moment we are in our growing phase, I would say, mental
Hmm.
health. health and mental health services. We are in a stage where we are growing, but it is also the phase where we are also struggling. Because जब हम कोई चीज start करते हैं तो उस समय struggles भी बहुत ज्यादा होते हैं. I think one of the biggest change that I would like to see is we need a lot of changes in the policies and a lot of changes at a systemic level. One of them being we don't have mental health insurances,
Hmm.
you know, and this is something which is there abroad. And that is one thing that really stops people from seeking help because they find it expensive, right?
Yeah,
Because mental health is actually a part of healthcare, right? And
mm,
like we have health insurances, but we don't have mental health insurances. And
absolutely.
even if there's something written in the law, we don't actively, engage in that, or it's not very out there.
Hmm.
So I think that is something which is needed for all of us because with time the stress, anxiety, and everything is increasing badly, and it's
True.
impacting all of us,
Hmm.
extensively. So I think mental health insurance is one thing that need to really come up, right? Second would be, I think right now there's for a lot of people, they sort of stop themselves from going into the field for one major reason, which is job security. So,
Hmm.
for instance, when we talk about engineers, when we talk about MBAs, when we are in our masters, right, we don't have this job, we don't have this mindset that we won't get a job. We have this mindset that कि शायद मेरी placement हो पाएगी कि नहीं,
Yes. Yeah.
right? But the colleges have companies who are coming for placements, right? So they
Hmm.
know there are a lot of companies out there, but they think about कि placement हो पाएगी कि नहीं, but there are a lot of options. But when
Hmm.
as a psychology student you come out from your masters, there are hardly any companies who come for placements, right? So because we are in this growing phase and in this struggling phase, we all of us at an individual level are trying to make a space for us.
True. Yes.
So someone who is having a financial backing can really go forward in the field. But someone who is immediately looking for that monetary support after masters, those are the kind of people who sort of step back because there's no job security that way. Right now there are not very big companies who are coming for placements. We
Hmm.
don't have very big organizations who are um, hiring psychologists. Definitely, there are companies now because a lot of startups have started now.
True. Yes.
So I would say definitely there would be a time when these things would happen. There are
Hmm.
definitely a lot of startups, but still we have a long way to go. So I think
Absolutely.
I would like to see when a student of masters in psychology comes out, he or she has a lot of options, and maybe there are so many companies who are coming for placements, right? So that is one. And one last thing that I would say is that a lot of changes need to also come in the education system because
Absolutely.
once you come out of masters, a lot of people start immediately practicing without actually focusing a lot on trainings.
Hmm.
So because it's a very we need a lot of skill training in this field and a lot of supervision, but there is no
True.
defined structure and or nobody is sort of navigating or inquiring how many people are doing trainings from where and people are just practicing. So a lot of
Yeah.
people in the field are not taking that responsibility of getting properly trained and then
Hmm.
moving forward because there's no specific, let's say, organization or a specific defined structure or someone
Hmm.
who is sort of have an eye on everything, to maintain that credibility. So I think a lot of changes there also need to take take place. Yeah.
Right. So, Ayushi, we are going to have a rapid fire questions for you. Okay. And we want you to answer
Mhm.
them rapidly. So, the very first question
Right.
is, uh, any favorite book on psychology or self development you would like to
Mhm.
share?
Right. I think I'm reading a book and it's an IFS book. It's called Self Therapy by Jay Early. So if you're someone who is looking for sort of roadmap for self healing and want to go deeper into the journey of healing, I think this is, and you have an interest in IFS, this is the book that I would really recommend. Yeah.
Lovely. Uh, top three mental health practices which you recommend to your clients?
Right. I think there are many, and again, we can go on a long discussion on this. But I think a lot of us can start to look at self-regulation, and we can start reading. I won't give a tip, but I would say you can start reading a little bit about nervous system regulation,
Hmm.
and how that works, and how trauma impacts our nervous system, and how by working with the body we can really change a lot of things. So I think I would recommend a lot of body work, but I would say first read about
Right. So, any morning routine you have in your schedule which you just cannot live without?
it. Right. I think right now I've started yoga. Right. It's not been long, and I usually come back to it again and again. Sometimes I'm not able to be consistent with it, but there's something
Hmm.
inside me that always pushes me back to yoga, every morning. So that is something that currently I can't resist. So I would say that. Yeah.
All right. Uh, One word that describes your approach to the therapy.
I think openness and curiosity.
Lovely.
Mhm.
Favorite quote that truly inspires you.
Favorite quote that really inspires me. I think the one that is coming into my head at the moment, I think there are many, but the one which is coming in my head at the moment is that clarity is kindness, and we need to give people clarity and have clarity in our lives, because that's an act of kindness.
Lovely, lovely. Uh, Favorite mindfulness exercise.
Hmm. Right. I think for me, walking would be a very good mindfulness exercise, when I can leave my phone at home and I can just walk and observe everything which I can see around me, and especially walking in nature. So just witnessing the trees, witnessing the people walking, and just cherishing that moment. Yeah.
Lovely, Ayushi. Thank you so much for answering this question. So before we wrap up this conversation, Ayushi, would you like to
Mhm.
talk about, how do you take forward your counseling sessions with the people? And if you would like to share some deep insights that how people can connect with you, and what kind of sessions do you follow? Do you follow a group session or one-to-one sessions? So how do you guide them?
Right. So currently, I am running this practice, as you said, called self-led healing. Right. I have an Instagram page. I'm also available on WhatsApp, so people can reach out to me through that. Right, all the information is there. And right now, I'm providing individual counseling to adult clients virtually. Right. I'm also open for doing group work and workshop, and I'm also open for collaboration. But if someone is looking for doing deeper work in psychotherapy, I'm always here available, right? And yeah, you can reach out to me for that.
Lovely. In your experience, what are some effective techniques for managing anxiety and stress for the listeners? Uh, you can share a quick tip.
I think I don't have a quick tip, honestly. I would say. I will also say why. Because अगर इतना आसान होता, so all of us would have searched the Google tips for managing anxiety and things would have been okay, right? So I would say there's no quick fix, and that's the reason why people come for therapy. But one thing that I would really say is that we don't need to get rid of anything. We don't need to run away from our emotions. Even if you're facing anxiety and you're experiencing anxiety, the more you'll run away from it, the more it will come back. So I would say, like, just see anxiety as a kid inside of you who's feeling anxious, and you are that compassionate parent for that child. And what are the things that you would tell that child if that child is standing in front, you know? Just be compassionate and ask questions like, why are you anxious? But with a lot of compassion. What is something that you're afraid would happen?
Hmm.
What do you need from me? Right? So all of us have anxious thoughts and we don't need to get rid of them. We don't need to avoid them, but we need to actually attend to them with compassion, with curiosity, like we're a compassionate parent for them. So I think I would say start being curious and don't run away from your emotions. Yeah. And if you're struggling, you can definitely reach out for therapy.
So, any message would you like to share with the audience who are struggling with emotional trauma, anxiety, for that matter?
I think the message that I would like to give out there to the audience who are struggling or experiencing trauma is that I know you're suffering, but it was not your fault in that time, you know. And your system did the best it could in that moment. You did the best you knew at that time. No matter whenever you look back, you sometimes feel like, oh, I should have done that differently, you know. But जितना आपको बेस्ट पता था आपने करा
Hmm.
and whatever happened, it was not your fault, right? So if you're struggling, I have deep compassion for you. But I would just say that things do change. And now, as adults, we can take responsibility and accountability to reparent ourselves and heal. And if you're struggling, it's okay to reach out for help. You know? So that is something that I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. Ayushi, one curious question from my side, which is that one
Sure.
habit has been a game changer for you in your life?
One habit. I think embracing slowness. You know, I think embracing slowness and understanding that it's so important in our lives because nobody tells that to us. Nobody
Yes,
teaches us that. Everyone tells us the time is rushing and you need to do everything immediately. You need to grab all the opportunities. But I would say sometimes it's okay to also say no to opportunity because there is a lot out there for all of us. Universe has given a lot to us and there's abundance out there.
yes,
So even if you say no to things, you're not losing out. Sometimes we always work from that space of scarcity, that, oh, I will lose out on this. There's a lot for everyone out there. So take it slow. You don't need to rush. And I think bringing and embracing slowness in my life has really helped, and a big part of healing is actually resting. You know, you can actually heal in rest and slowness. I think that is something that has been a game changer for me. Yeah.
awesome, awesome. So, thank you so much, Ayushi, for being here today and sharing so much of valuable insight. It was truly, truly amazing to have you here.
Thank you, Anuradha ji. And even I was looking forward to this conversation. I love talking about mental health, life, and just about human beings in general. So it was my pleasure to be here. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Ayushi.
Thank you.